Hi, I'm Marcus Hutzel, and in this video we're going to take a look at the Behringer UM2 versus the M-Audio M-Track Solo and see which one comes out the winner. And in my opinion, there is a clear winner in this comparison, and I'll get to which one and why in just a bit. I did an entire video on the UM2 because I think it's a great, inexpensive, budget, but quality USB audio interface, and the best value interface for features versus price. And that still holds true in my opinion. I own a UM2 and I use many of them for work as well for getting audio into computers for live streams. But I needed another audio interface for my home office and I thought I'd try out the M-Audio M-Track Solo since it's very close in price and features to the UM2. And because I've used M-Audio products in the past and generally they've been pretty good and performed well enough. So I wanted to give the M-Track Solo a try and just have it live here in my home office for using XLR mics and plugging in my acoustic guitar back there and trying to play guitar. I did say trying to play the guitar. I'm a drummer, not a guitar player. But anyway, I digress. The UM2 and the M-Track Solo are about the same price. The UM2 comes in usually at about $45, the M-Track Solo for about $50. And it's very similar to the UM2, and they have almost identical features and functionality. So let's go over both of these real quick. Again, both are around $50. The M-Track Solo is usually about $49, but the Behringer UM2 usually comes in just a bit less, around $45. Both units have a USB-B port on the back for connecting to your computer. Both units are bus powered from that USB connection, so they do not require an external or additional power supply. Both of them have an XLR combo input on input 1, which can accept XLR cables for use with microphones, or quarter-inch cables for use with balanced signals via TRS or tip ring sleeve cables, or unbalanced signals via TS or tip sleeve cables. But make sure to not feed it a stereo signal on a TRS cable because that just won't work. You can plug a TRS cable into input 1, but the signal must be balanced, that is, ground, hot, cold signal, not stereo or not ground, left, right. So again, XLR or quarter-inch, balanced or unbalanced, just not stereo into a single input. Both units have a second input, which is quarter-inch only, and generally meant to plug in electric instruments like electric bass guitars, electric guitars, keyboards, or acoustic electric guitars. But the M-Audio has an additional selector switch on input 2, and this feature interested me because it gives the M-Track Solo a few more options than the UM2, as this selector switch lets you choose between instrument or line level signals going into input 2. And what this does is that it changes the impedance on the preamp on input 2. It basically tells the preamp if it should be expecting a line level signal if the switch is on line, like say from an external audio mixer, or if the switch is towards the guitar symbol, the preamp knows that you're plugging in something like an electric guitar, an acoustic electric guitar, or an electric bass, so the preamp can properly deal with the line level or instrument level audio signals and their related voltages. So that's a plus for the M-Track Solo. And input 2 on both units can accept balanced or unbalanced signals on tip sleeve or TRS tip ring sleeve cables, but again, not stereo signals. Both units have RCA outputs on the back for connecting to speakers directly if your speakers have RCA inputs, and the level to those RCA outputs follows the main output knob for volume control, so you'll get the same signal out of both the headphone output and the RCA outputs at the same time. Both units have headphone jacks, but the UM2 has a quarter-inch headphone jack, whereas the M-Track Solo has an 1/8-inch headphone jack. Both have a direct monitor feature, which sends the incoming signals from inputs 1 and 2 directly to the headphones for real-time monitoring of incoming signals. But both still allow the USB output from your computer to also go to the headphone and RCA outputs at the same time. So you can monitor signal coming from your computer as well as the incoming inputs via the headphone jack or RCA outputs. And both operate mostly identically, where the direct monitor feature sends the incoming signals to the headphone jack as well as the RCA outputs. So you must be careful about any feedback if you have speakers near your microphone when using the direct monitor feature. Each unit has an individual gain knob for each input, as well as a master output level knob. Both offer phantom power to input 1 for use with condenser microphones. And if using an Apple computer, neither of these require you to install software drivers. They'll work right out of the box with a Mac. But both units do require driver installation if using a Windows PC. Both are mostly made of plastic. Even though the M-Audio looks like metal, it's still just a plastic housing. And honestly, I like the design of the M-Audio M-Track Solo a little better just overall. I like the way this looks, but unfortunately, looks aren't everything, as we'll see. So those are the similarities, and as you can see, they're almost identical in terms of features, and one of the main reasons I ordered the M-Audio M-Track Solo was for that selectable mic line switch on input 2, so I could switch it between expecting line level or instrument level signals. It just gives you more options on input 2 in case you want to feed in signal from, say, an audio mixer, or if you want to plug in an electric guitar, bass, or electric acoustic guitar. Now for some differences. The M-Audio M-Track Solo is overall a bit larger, and that's neither good or bad depending on your needs. Both units can provide phantom power to input 1, but the UM2's phantom power switch is on the back of the unit, whereas the M-Audio M-Track Solo's phantom power switch is on the front, and it could be a bit easier to get to if you need to turn it on or off a lot. The UM2 has a separate clip indicator light for inputs 1 and 2, whereas the M-Track Solo has a single LED indicator for each input, which will turn red if clipping, but both styles work just fine. As stated, the UM2 has a 1/4-inch headphone jack, whereas the M-Track Solo has an 1/8-inch headphone jack, but again, both of these work just fine as well. And again, the M-Track Solo has the selectable line instrument switch on input 2, which changes the preamp's impedance, but the UM2's input is expecting instrument level only, and its preamp impedance is fixed at 1 megaohm. The UM2 has a separate dedicated power light to indicate that it's receiving power via USB, but the M-Audio M-Track Solo does not have any such light to signify that the unit is powered, so there's no good way of telling if the unit is on unless you just, maybe keep the phantom power on, because the phantom power light will stay illuminated when the phantom power is engaged, but depending on what you have plugged in, you can't always have the phantom power turned on, so no dedicated power light. On both models, when using a 1/4-inch cable on input 1, so using the combo part of that combo input, the units are expecting a hotter line level signal. So both units will pad or reduce the incoming signal that flows through the unit using a 1/4-inch cable on input 1 and into your computer. So these units do a little bit of work for you and reduce the level so you have more headroom and more adjustment ability with your gain knob. The UM2 reduces the signal about 20 dB, so a 20 dB pad, but the M-Track Solo only reduces or pads the signal about 10 dB. You should be fine either way, but only having 10 dB of reduction on the M-Track Solo for a line level input may not be enough reduction for a professional line level signal that someone else may be feeding over to you that you don't have control of. You may still be clipping the input if you only have 10 dB of reduction, so just be aware of this difference in these interfaces. I prefer the 20 dB gain reduction on the UM2, and I think it's more usable in real-world scenarios. So overall, minor differences between these two models, except when you get to the operation of the units, and here's where the M-Track Solo has a severe disadvantage. I'd almost say a severe design flaw or simply poor quality control, specifically in the preamps. On the M-Track Solo, when gaining up an input signal from either a microphone or from a 1/4-inch balanced signal on either input, the preamps are relatively smooth up through their gain up to about 95% of maximum, and the levels going to the outputs or USB are amplified accordingly and relatively smooth as well. But once you go from about 95% to about 96% on the gain knob, which is a very small change in position of the gain knob, the level or amplification of the signal by the preamp makes a sudden jump or boost in signal, and it's quite a jump in dB level. It's almost as if the floodgates broke open and the water or gain started spilling out uncontrollably, allowing everything through. But up to about 95%, it seemed to be fairly smooth, and to be honest, good audio practice generally means you won't want to have to push your input gain all the way up, but even if you have to, a preamp shouldn't suddenly boost the signal so drastically. Here's an example. Alright, so I'm going to do a quick recording check in Adobe Audition using an SM58 directly into input 1 of the M-Track Solo. And as I turn the gain knob and as we watch Adobe Audition here, we can see that as I turn the gain knob, my voice from the SM58 and the gain gets turned up accordingly and recorded. So as I get into this upper range, number one, I'll switch to the SM58 audio here. You can hear just a little bit of scratchiness as I barely turn that gain knob. That's just the noisy preamp. It's not the microphone, it's not the cable. That's as I'm making these small adjustments on the preamp knob here. So now as we jump up into that 95-96% range, as I keep talking and we hit that little mark where I said it's going to jump, it will immediately, right as I get to about here, make a sudden jump. You can see it in the waveform in Adobe Audition. You can obviously hear it. I'll try to leave in some of this slightly distorted audio because
because it's indicative of both M-Audio M-Track Solo units that I received. And, usually you don't want to have to be in that very, very upper range of your preamp gain, but occasionally you might need to. And if you do need to be up there, a preamp shouldn't behave in that way. And I think there are better units out there that will give you much better results.
This just isn't how a preamp should behave. And if you're using a microphone that needs a lot of gain, like a Shure SM58 perhaps, you're going to be near the top end of your gain knob most of the time on many small, inexpensive consoles and most USB audio interfaces. And having that sudden and large jump in signal isn't going to produce good quality recordings for you if you need to be up in that upper range of your gain knob. And the preamp on the first unit I received also had a bit of a noisy, staticky sound when changing the gain anywhere along its position on the knob. And that static could be heard in both my headphones, and it also traveled out the USB output to the computer, and that noise was recorded. So I thought maybe it was just a problem with the preamp on that model I received, so I sent that one back, and I got a replacement. And even though my replacement didn't have as scratchy of a preamp, it was still a bit noisy when gaining up or down, but more importantly, the second unit also had this severe boost of signal at about that 95 to 96% mark. That's definitely not the sign of a great quality preamp. It really should be more smooth all the way through, and it definitely shouldn't be noisy when turning the knob. The Behringer UM2 doesn't have any of these problems. It's clean and quiet, and it's very smooth in its gain response all the way through the gain control, and doesn't suddenly boost the gain right at the end. That for me is the primary reason that I think the UM2 is the much better unit over the M-Track Solo. The entire point of these devices is to give you a preamp to amplify a microphone or an instrument, and the M-Track Solo just doesn't perform that function very well. And even though these are budget interfaces aimed at the beginner, you should still be able to change the gain without the preamp adding static or noise, and it shouldn't have sudden jumps in gain. There's enough great quality competition out there that you should expect something better in a basic preamp. The UM2 performs just fine, gains smoothly, and still comes in cheaper than the M-Track Solo. And none of the UM2s that I've used have had any dirty preamp noise issues, and I've used probably at least 20 different units. I think M-Audio needs to do better on this unit. You can still use the M-Track Solo in most cases without any issues. Once my gain was set, it records into my audio software just fine. Just be wary of that upper 95 to 96% gain boost issue and listen for noise when adjusting the gain. For me, the preamp issues and the lower pad of only 10 dB on the 1/4 inch input on input 1 are definitely cons in my book and don't work for me. And the preamp issue should be a huge red flag to anyone serious about audio, even beginners. Overall, the M-Track Solo looks like a great little interface. I actually like the design a lot better, as I said before. I like the look of it. I like the selectable switch for input 2, but it just doesn't perform its primary function of signal gain very well. And that's about it. I really kind of wanted the M-Track Solo to be an inexpensive little USB audio interface for recording some guitar or using any of my XLR mics to have a quick virtual meeting here at my home, but unfortunately, I'll be sending this back and going with yet another Behringer UM2 for my modest home studio needs. I hope this video has been helpful to you in your search for a beginning or budget USB audio interface. Happy recording and streaming. Later.